The cracks appear 20 years had passed since humanity closed their borders. 20 years of silence, and the galaxy was starting to break. Dr. Velness of the Calthene hegemony stood in his medical facility, looking at rows of beds filled with dying patients. The vermis plague had returned, mutated, stronger than before. The cure that humanity had developed decades ago no longer worked against this new strain. His crystalline hands trembled as he reviewed the data. 3 billion infected across 17 systems, deaths climbing every day, and the humans who had devoted years to studying this disease, who understood it better than anyone else, were gone. "Have we heard back from the council?" he asked his assistant. "The council says they are working on it," the assistant replied quietly. "But doctor, you know as well as I do that the council medical teams don't have the experience. The humans were the experts on vermis. Without them," Velness didn't need him to finish the sentence. "Without them, billions would die. Already were dying." He had requested permission to contact humanity directly. The council had denied it. Pride, he thought bitterly. The council's pride would kill more surely than any plague. In the Telos system, Commander Draven watched the battle display with growing horror. The war with the Vryn had reignited 2 months ago, and it was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. 4 sectors were now involved, and the violence showed no signs of stopping. 20 years ago, when this same conflict had erupted, humanity had mediated. Ambassador Park Doyen had spent months shuttling between both sides, listening, understanding, finding common ground. The peace had lasted for 53 years after that, but Doyen was gone. All the humans were gone, and nobody else in the council seemed able or willing to do what he had done. The elder species, used to thinking in terms of millennia, couldn't understand the urgency of the situation. By the time they decided on an approach, thousands more would be dead. Draven had fought in the first Telos-Vryn War. He had seen the devastation. He had hoped never to see it again. Now he watched it happen in real time, and he felt powerless to stop it. On the station at Tarvek Prime, Merchant Captain Alaris watched the trade reports with a sinking feeling in her chest. She was a Morellian, a species that had built their entire economy around interstellar trade. For 200 years that trade had flourished. But something was wrong. The numbers didn't work anymore. "It's the routes," her first officer explained. The humans had optimized all the major trade routes. Their computers calculated the most efficient paths, factored in gravitational variations, stellar drift, traffic patterns. "We've been using their routing for 20 years, but the galaxy shifts. Stellar positions change. The old routes are becoming inefficient. Can't we recalculate?" Ilaris asked. "We've tried. Our computers can do it, but not as well. The humans had something special in their algorithms. Some approach we didn't understand. Their routes were always 7 to 12% more efficient than ours. 7 to 12% didn't sound like much until you multiplied it across the entire galactic economy. It meant ships using more fuel. It meant longer journey times. It meant higher costs. Small species, the ones who operated on thin margins, were starting to struggle. Food shipments arrived late. Critical supplies were delayed. Prices went up. And the situation grew worse each month as the galaxy drifted further from the positions humanity had last calculated for. Inside human space, life continued in ways the council couldn't imagine. Kim Dae-hyun, now 51 years old, continued his historical documentation. His quarters in the Sol Archives overlooked the city, transformed almost beyond recognition. Buildings reached higher, built with materials that didn't exist 20 years ago. The sky was filled with traffic from orbital stations connected by elevator systems the council had forbidden as too risky. He wrote in his journal, "Year 20 of isolation. We have surpassed every projection. Our population has grown to 15 billion across 37 worlds. Our technology has advanced more in these 2 decades than in the previous 2 centuries. The question we must ask ourselves, when the council finally sees what we have become, will they be amazed or terrified?" Subin, now 54 and an admiral, oversaw the exploration fleet. The Silent Promise had been the first of many ships using humanity's advanced drive systems. In 20 years, they had charted 15,000 new systems beyond council space. She stood in the command center of the exploration headquarters, reviewing reports from 20 different vessels. Each one pushed further into unknown space. Each one finding worlds the council would never reach with their slower ships. "Admiral," her aide said, We've detected something unusual in Sector 447. Signs of civilization, but not any species in Council records. Subin looked at the data. A young species, just beginning to develop spaceflight. In Council space, they would have been contacted, evaluated, and possibly restricted. Here, beyond Council reach, humanity could make their own decisions about first contact. Send a contact team, she ordered. Standard protocols. Observe, communicate if they're ready, and offer help if they want it. No demands, no restrictions. It was a different approach than the Council's. Humanity remembered what it felt like to be the young species. The newcomers treated with suspicion. In the Council chambers, the emergency session was filled with tension. Jungnari of the Rilvan Coalition stood at the center podium, her voice carrying urgency that couldn't be ignored. 3 billion dead from the Vermis plague, thousands dying daily in the Tellus-Vrin war, the galactic economy contracting for the first time in centuries. And we sit here debating procedure. Her frustration was visible. We need human help and we need it now, Councillor Marbeck responded angrily. We exiled them. We cannot simply reverse that decision because we face challenges. It makes us look weak. We are weak, Nari shouted, abandoning diplomatic courtesy. We exiled our problem solvers. We removed the species that looked at our old challenges with fresh eyes. We did this to ourselves. High Arbiter Velnor, now ancient even by his species standards, raised a hand for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we attempt to contact humanity and request their assistance? They won't help us, Threxy said quietly. The crystalline being had grown dimmer over the years, as if the light inside had started to fade. 20 years of silence. They've made their choice. We made the choice for them, Nari countered. We exiled them. But exile doesn't have to be permanent. We can reach out. We can apologize. We can ask. The vote was called. It was closer this time. 23 for attempting contact, 21 against, 3 abstaining. The message was crafted carefully. It acknowledged the hardships the galaxy faced. It admitted, though the words clearly pained those who wrote them, that humanity's absence had been felt. It requested very formally and respectfully if humanity would consider sharing their expertise in medical research, conflict resolution, and logistical optimization. The message was sent to the borders of human space. Then the Council waited. Days passed. Then weeks. The waiting stretched into a month, then 2. Finally, a response came. Text only as always. But this time there was something different about it. Something final. We have received your message. We understand the challenges you face. We sympathize with those who suffer. However, we are not interested in resuming relations with the Council at this time. We wish you well in resolving these difficulties. We are confident you will find solutions, as your species managed for millennia before we arrived. That was all. Polite, respectful, and completely final. In the Council chamber, the message was read aloud. Silence followed, the kind of silence that comes when people realize they've made a mistake that can't be fixed. Councillor Threxis's crystalline form seemed to dim even further. The being who had led the vote for humanity's isolation 20 years ago now faced the consequences of that decision. They had needed humanity more than they'd known, and now humanity didn't need them at all. Jungnari sat in her seat and quietly wept, not for herself, but for all the beings dying of plague, all the soldiers dying in pointless wars, all the struggling merchants whose businesses were failing. They were all paying the price for the Council's pride. High Arbiter Velnor dismissed the session early. There was nothing more to say. Outside the chamber, in the corridors where beings gathered to discuss Council business, a new conversation began. Quietly at first, then growing louder, a question that had been unthinkable 20 years ago. What if the Council made a mistake? It was a crack in the foundation, small but growing, and once such cracks appeared, they tended to spread. The silence begins 5 years had passed since humanity closed their borders, 5 years of absolute silence. Han Taijin stood on the bridge of the defense platform positioned at the edge of human space. He was 38 years old, a military man who had spent most of his adult life preparing for threats that might never come. Now he watched the screens showing the border, waiting for something he knew would arrive eventually. Sir, another probe, his sensor officer reported. Same type as the last 4. Council design, passive sensors only. Let it approach until it reaches the boundary, then turn it away, Taijin said calmly. Standard response. No communication. The probe, a small automated vessel designed to scan and report, drifted closer to human space. When it reached the invisible line that marked human territory, the defense systems activated. No weapons fired, no aggressive moves were made. The probe simply found itself unable to advance any further, gently pushed back by fields it couldn't understand or penetrate. After a few minutes of trying different approaches, the probe gave up and turned back toward Council space. It would return with the same information all the others had brought. Nothing. The scans showed nothing. Human space was a dark spot in the galaxy now, impossible to observe from outside. On Earth, Shinarium reviewed the progress reports from the Dyson Sphere project with barely contained excitement. She was 45, and this was the achievement of her lifetime. The thing that would have been called impossible by the Council, the project they would never have allowed. The first ring is complete, she told the gathered directors. We now have a partial Dyson swarm around Sol. Energy collection has increased by a factor of 12 compared to last year. Quan Minho, director of the Unified Human Government, nodded approvingly. He was 63, gray-haired and sharp-eyed. And the council regulations that forbade this technology? No longer apply to us, Arium said with a slight smile. We're not council members. We can build what we want. That was the secret that the council couldn't see behind humanity's walls. Freed from regulations designed to keep younger species from advancing too quickly, freed from rules that protected the power of elder species. Humanity had exploded with innovation. The quantum computers that council law said were too dangerous now handled everything from weather control to medical research. The genetic modifications that were forbidden had eliminated dozens of diseases. The energy systems that were restricted had powered an expansion of human civilization that would have taken centuries under council oversight. But none of this was shared. No papers were published in galactic journals. No discoveries were announced to the council. Humanity built and grew in silence. In the council chambers, the silence from human space was becoming a topic of concern. High Arbiter Velnor called a session specifically to discuss it. 5 years, he said, his ancient voice carrying through the hall. 5 years without a single transmission from human territory. This is unusual. Counselor Threxus, still haunted by doubt that had never quite left, spoke carefully. Perhaps they are simply respecting the terms of their isolation. Or perhaps they are planning something, suggested Counselor Marvek, a reptilian being from a warrior species. Silence can hide many preparations. We have sent 37 probes, Velnor said. All returned with no data. We cannot observe them. Should this concern us? The chamber fell quiet. The truth was, it did concern many of them. They had expected humanity to struggle in isolation. They had expected to receive messages begging for readmission. They had expected the young species to realize they needed the Council's protection and wisdom. Instead, there was only silence. And uncertainty is always more frightening than known threats. Young Nari of the Rilvan Coalition stood to speak. The Rilvan had been one of the 3 species to vote against humanity's isolation, and they had maintained that position ever since. Honored Council, she began, I propose we attempt official contact with humanity. Not to spy, but to open diplomatic channels. It has been 5 years. Perhaps it is time to discuss their possible return to Council space. They were exiled, not temporarily suspended. Marvek objected. We stated clearly that thousands of years might pass before reconsideration. Yes, but we did not account for total silence, Nari countered. We assumed they would maintain some communication. We cannot govern effectively when we have no knowledge of what an entire species is doing. Velnor considered this. Very well. We will attempt official contact. Counselor Threxus, you led the isolation vote. You should lead the contact attempt. Threxus wanted to refuse but couldn't without seeming afraid. As you wish, Arbiter. The message was carefully crafted. It acknowledged the isolation. It expressed hope for future cooperation. It asked, very politely, if humanity would be willing to share basic information about their status and development. The message was transmitted on all frequencies that humanity had once used. It was sent to the border of human space, directed at every planet in their territory. Days passed. Then weeks. Finally, after a full month, a response came. Text only, brief. Message received and acknowledged. We are well. No information will be shared at this time. Thank you for your concern, that was all. 17 words. Nothing more. Inside human space, Kim Dae-hyun sat in his office in the Seoul archives documenting everything. He was a historian, 31 years old, and he understood the importance of recording this period accurately. He wrote, Year 5 of isolation. Humanity continues to develop without council oversight. The removal of restrictions has accelerated our advancement beyond all projections. We are becoming something the council never expected us to be. The question remains, when they finally see what we have become, how will they react? Dae-hyun saved his work and looked at the stack of records beside him. 5 years of growth, innovation, and change. 5 years of humanity discovering what they could do when no one told them they couldn't. Oh Subin prepared her ship, the Silent Promise, for its maiden voyage. She was 34. A captain selected for the most important exploration mission in human history. Her ship used a drive system that made Council warp technology look ancient in comparison. All systems ready, her engineer reported. We can depart on your order, Captain. Subin looked at her crew. 23 people carefully selected from thousands of volunteers. We're going beyond the galactic rim. We're going to places the Council has never bothered to explore because their ships are too slow. We'll chart new systems, find new worlds, and we'll do it faster than they thought possible. She paused, then added with a smile. And we won't tell them about any of it. The crew laughed and the Silent Promise departed. It would complete a 6-month journey that would have taken Council ships 50 years. It would discover 200 systems, 17 of which held planets suitable for colonization. And none of this information would ever reach Council databases. Back on the Council station, Threxus stood alone in the observation deck. The crystalline being looked out at the stars and thought about humanity. 5 years ago, they had seemed so desperate to be part of the Council, so eager to please, to contribute, to belong. Now they were gone. Silent, unreachable. And the Council, Threxus realized with growing unease, had no idea what was happening in that dark corner of space. Perhaps we acted in haste. Threxus whispered to the empty room. The words echoed off the walls, heard by no one. On Earth, Kwon Minho stood before the window of his office, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, beyond what eyes could see, was the massive ring of the Dyson swarm, collecting energy from their sun. Somewhere out there, the Silent Promise was pushing the boundaries of explored space. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were building a future that the Council had tried to prevent. He spoke to his assistant, who stood quietly behind him. Have we received any further messages from the Council? No, Director. Just that one inquiry a month ago, and we sent our standard response. Good, Minho said. Let them wonder. Let them worry. And let them realize slowly what they've lost. He turned from the window and smiled. The silence is our greatest weapon, and we haven't even had to fire a shot. The great withdrawal Lee Ji-won had not slept in 3 days. She stood in the command center on Earth, surrounded by dozens of screens showing different colonies, stations, and outposts across Council space. Each screen represented thousands of lives that needed to come home. 40 million humans scattered across hundreds of locations, and she had to bring them all back in 90 days. Status on Kepler Station? She asked, her voice hoarse from too much talking and not enough water. Governor Bay reports they're at 70% evacuation. Someone called out. 3 million beings total on that station, about 800,000 are human. They're ahead of schedule. Ji-won nodded and made a note on her tablet. Kepler Station was humanity's largest off-world settlement. A massive ring that orbited a gas giant and served as a hub for trade between 5 different sectors. Bae-heejin was doing good work there. What about the research outpost on Telvin 4? Ships are en route. The scientists are packing up their equipment. They're asking if they can bring the experimental gardens. Tell them yes, Ji-won said. Bring everything. Seeds, soil samples, research data, everything. We leave nothing for them to study or copy. The evacuation had become more than just moving people. It had become a matter of pride. Humanity would leave Council space completely and totally. Every ship, every satellite, every piece of technology would come home. The galaxy would get nothing from them. On Kepler Station, Bae-heejin walked through the commercial district for what she knew would be the last time. The shops were mostly empty now, their owners having already left. Human merchants packed their goods into crates. Alien shopkeepers watched with confused expressions. A Rilvan trader, a being with 6 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water, approached her. His name was something humans couldn't pronounce easily. so he went by Rix when dealing with humans. Governor Bay, Rix said in the careful way he spoke human languages. I do not understand. Why must you go? The council's ruling is harsh, but you could appeal. You could negotiate? Yejin stopped and looked at him. She had known Rix for 8 years. He was a good person, fair in his dealings, kind to his workers. Rix, did your people vote for our isolation? The Rilvan's skin color shifted, a sign of discomfort. The Rilvan councilor voted yes. But many of us disagreed with that vote. It does not represent all of us. But it represents your government, Yejin said gently. And that's what matters. The council has made their decision. We accept it. You could fight this, Rix insisted. Politically, I mean. You have allies. 3 allies out of 47. Yejin corrected. 3 species voted against our isolation. 3. We thought we had more friends than that. She placed a hand on one of Rix's arms, a gesture of friendship among his people. I'm sorry. You've been a good friend to us, but we won't stay where we're not wanted. Choi Sungmin commanded the colony ship New Horizon, one of 200 vessels dedicated to the evacuation effort. His ship was designed to carry 5,000 people in relative comfort, but right now it held 7,000. With families packed into every available space, he stood on the bridge, looking at the holographic display of his route. They were leaving the Deneb sector heading back toward Seoul. The journey would take 3 weeks even with the fastest drives humanity possessed. Captain, his first officer said, we're receiving requests from non-human passengers. Aliens who want to come with us. Seungmin turned. Explain. Mostly people married to humans or who have human children. Some are just friends who don't want to see us go. They're asking if they can accompany us to human space. It was a complicated question. Seungmin thought about it for a moment, then shook his head. Tell them we appreciate their friendship, but this is a human withdrawal. We can't bring others into our isolation. The council might see it as us recruiting allies, and it could cause problems for them. The first officer nodded and went to deliver the message. Seungmin felt the weight of it. How many relationships were being torn apart by this decision? How many friendships ended at council borders? Across the galaxy, the withdrawal continued. Humans packed up homes they'd built, businesses they'd started, lives they'd created. Some had been born in council space and had never seen Earth. They were going to a homeworld they knew only from pictures and stories. There were tears. There were angry words. But there was also efficiency. Humans worked together with the precision of a species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and the near destruction of their own planet. They knew how to endure. On day 43, Lee Ji-won received a priority message from Ambassador Park Doyen. He was still at the council station, overseeing the final diplomatic details. Ji-won, they're starting to realize what they're losing, Doyen said, his image flickering on her screen. I've had visits from 6 different counselors in the past week. They're asking if we're really going through with this, if there's any way to negotiate. What did you tell them? Ji-won asked. I told them the truth. We are going through with this. We are not angry. We are not hurt. We simply accept their decision and will act accordingly. Ji-won smiled despite her exhaustion. That must confuse them. It does, Doyen confirmed. They expected us to beg or to rage or to threaten. Instead, we're just leaving quietly, efficiently, completely. I think it scares them more than anger would have. By day 70, 90% of humans had left council space. The final stragglers were packing up, saying goodbyes, taking last looks at places they'd called home. On day 87, Bae Hyejin stood alone in the command center of Kepler Station. Every human had evacuated. The aliens who lived on the station had mostly left too, uncertain about the station's future without human management. She walked slowly through the empty corridors, her footsteps echoing. The lights were still on, systems still running. It was like a city where everyone had suddenly vanished. In the main control room, she accessed the station's core systems. Her fingers moved across the controls, entering commands she'd memorized but hoped never to use. The shutdown sequence. Computer initiate full station shutdown authorization. Bae Hyejin, Governor 007. The computer's calm voice responded. Shutdown sequence initiated. All systems will power down in 15 minutes. Please evacuate to a safe distance. Hyejin took one last look around the command center, at the windows showing the gas giant's swirling storms, at the screens that had once been filled with data and life. Then she turned and walked to the docking bay where her shuttle waited. As her shuttle pulled away, she watched through the viewport. Section by section, the lights on Kepler Station went dark. Within an hour, it was just a dark ring against the stars, dead and empty. She whispered to herself, "May you remember what you gave up." On day 87, all humans were out of Council space. On day 89, the last human ships crossed back into the original boundaries of human territory, the Sol system, and 12 nearby colonies established before Council contact. On day 90, exactly on schedule, every single human vessel shut down their Council-compatible communication systems. The frequencies went silent. The channels went dark. Li Jiwan stood in Earth's command center and watched the final confirmations come in. Every ship accounted for. Every person safe. The withdrawal was complete. Close the borders, she ordered. Activate the privacy screens. And begin Phase 2. Around human space, defensive satellites activated. Not weapons, just sensors and jammers. The kind of technology that made it impossible for outsiders to scan or observe what happened within human territory. The boundaries became opaque, impenetrable to outside observation. The galaxy could no longer see what humanity was doing. And humanity was no longer interested in telling them. In the council chamber, Counselor Threxus stood at the window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was gone. Silent. Vanished behind walls of their own making. For the first time, Threxus felt something like doubt. Had they made a mistake? No, surely not. Humanity was young, reckless. This was for the best, but the chamber felt emptier now, and would continue to feel empty for a very long time. The Council's decision. The chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that caught the light of twin suns. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were beings of pure crystalline structure that hummed with inner light. Park Doyen stood at the center podium, his hands gripping the edges of the transparent surface. He was 54 years old, with silver threading through his black hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many late nights spent reading treaty documents. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, and right now, every eye in the chamber was fixed on him. "We have done nothing wrong," Doyen said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his chest. "Humanity has honored every agreement. We have shared our discoveries freely. When the Vermis plague threatened to destroy the Calthean worlds, our scientists worked for 3 years to develop a cure. We asked for nothing in return." Counselor Threxus, a being that looked like living diamonds shaped into something roughly humanoid, made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Your passion is noted, Ambassador Park, but passion does not address our concerns. Your species advances too quickly. Your experiments with spatial manipulation could tear holes in reality itself. We follow all safety protocols," Doyen replied. "Our research is transparent. We submit every report on time." "That is precisely the problem," High Arbiter Vellner said from his seat above all others. He was old, older than some stars, his species having traveled between worlds when humanity was still learning to make fire. His voice sounded like stones grinding together. "You advance too quickly. In 127 years, you have gone from primitive nuclear fission to quantum entanglement communication. Such speed is unnatural." Doyen wanted to laugh, but he kept his face neutral. Unnatural. As if working hard and thinking creatively was somehow wrong. "We learn quickly because we must. Earth is one world. Most species here had colonies on dozens of planets before they even developed spaceflight. We had to reach further to survive. And now you reach too far," Threxus said. "Your colonies expand at rates that concern many here. 23 worlds in just over a century. All uninhabited worlds," Doyen countered. "We have taken nothing that belonged to others. We have displaced no one." Kang Mire sat behind Doyen in the human delegation section. She was 42, brilliant, and had won the Galactic Science Prize 3 times for her work in quantum physics. She wanted to stand and shout at them, to explain that humans weren't dangerous, just curious, but she knew it wouldn't matter. She had seen the vote counts. This was already decided. "The matter has been discussed extensively," Velnor said, and the way he said it made Doyen's blood run cold. "We will now vote on Resolution 447 Alpha. The isolation of humanity from council space, effective immediately upon passage. The voting lights began to appear on the massive display above them. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstain. Doyen watched the board fill with color. Green, green, yellow, green, green, red, green, green. When it finished, 42 green lights glowed against 3 red and 2 yellow. The resolution passes, Velnor announced. Humanity is hereby isolated from council space. All humans must withdraw from council territory within 90 standard days. All trade agreements are void. All communication channels will be severed. All protection under council laws rescinded. Doyen stood there, feeling as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. 127 years of partnership gone in a vote that took less than 3 minutes. This is wrong, he said quietly, but the microphone caught his words and spread them through the chamber. You are making a mistake. We have been friends. We have been allies. We have bled together and built together. You have been junior partners, Threxus corrected. And now you have grown too ambitious for your own good. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have matured, we can revisit this decision. A few thousand years. Doyen almost laughed. These beings thought in time frames that spanned epochs. To them, exiling humanity for a few millennia was like sending a child to their room for an hour. We need time to prepare, Doyen said, forcing himself to focus on practical matters. 90 days to evacuate 40 million people from across council space. You have excellent logistics, Velnor interrupted. We are confident you will manage. The 90-day period begins now. The session ended. Counselors began to file out, some quickly, others slowly. A few looked back at the human delegation with what might have been regret. Most didn't look at all. Yoon Ha-jun, captain of the diplomatic vessel Eternal Dawn, stood and walked to Doyen. He was younger, only 36, with the build of someone who spent time in the ship's gym and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen combat. Ambassador, we should return to the ship. We need to begin coordinating the withdrawal. Doyen nodded but didn't move. He stared at the empty chamber, at the seats where representatives of species humanity had considered friends had sat just moments ago. Friends who had voted to exile them without a second thought. Mirai touched his shoulder gently. Doyen, we need to go. We need to tell Earth. He turned to her and she saw something in his eyes that made her step back. It wasn't anger, not quite. It was something colder, something harder. They'll regret this, he said quietly. Doyen, not revenge, he said quickly, shaking his head. I don't mean we'll make them regret it. I mean they'll regret it themselves. They don't realize what they're giving up. What we gave them. Ha-jun and Mirai exchanged glances. They understood. Humanity had contributed so much to the council. Technology, yes, but also ideas, perspectives, solutions to problems that elder species had given up on because they'd been trying to solve them the same way for thousands of years. The three of them walked through the empty chamber toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. The lights began to dim automatically as they left, section by section, until only darkness remained. On the Eternal Dawn, Doyen sat in the communication room and recorded a message. His hands were steady now. His voice was calm. This is Ambassador Park Doyen to Earth Central Command. The Council has voted for our isolation. We have 90 days to bring everyone home. Begin preparations for full withdrawal from Council space. All citizens, all assets, all technology. We leave nothing behind. He paused, then added, and initiate communication blackout protocols. When we leave completely. Let them wonder what became of us. The message transmitted across the void, racing toward Earth at speeds that bent the rules of physics. Within hours, the response came back. Simple, direct, understood, acknowledged. We're ready. Bring them home. The Council's regret 50 years had passed since humanity closed their borders. 50 years of silence. And now the galaxy was burning. High Arbiter Velnor was dying. He knew it, though he told no one. His species lived for thousands of years, but even they had limits. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had witnessed the birth of the Council itself. And now, in what he suspected were his final years, he watched it crumble. The remnant had come from the dark spaces between spiral arms, a species unlike anything the Council had encountered. They were silicon-based, impossibly aggressive, and they didn't communicate. They simply conquered. 17 species had fallen to them in 3 years. Entire worlds stripped of resources, populations enslaved or eliminated. The Council's military forces, designed for peacekeeping rather than true warfare, were losing. Badly. We need to discuss options, Velnor said to the assembled counselors. The chamber was smaller now. 7 species had withdrawn from the council entirely, choosing to defend their own territories rather than contribute to the collective. The seats where humanity had once sat remained empty, a constant reminder of what they'd lost. Counselor Marvek, the warrior species representative, spoke grimly. Our forces are inadequate. The remnant adapt to our tactics faster than we can develop new ones. We need fresh strategic thinking. There was a long silence. Everyone knew what he meant. Everyone knew who he meant. Young Nari, now elderly but still serving the Rilvan coalition, finally said what they were all thinking. We need humanity. No, Threxus responded immediately. The crystalline being was barely recognizable now, cracks running through its form, the inner light dim and flickering. They refused us 30 years ago. They will refuse us again. 30 years ago we asked for help with medical research and trade routes, Nari said firmly. This is different. This is survival. Not just our survival. If the council falls, the remnant will spread across the entire galaxy. Eventually they'll reach human space too. Then perhaps humanity will face them alone, Marvek said, as they seem to prefer. Velnor raised his hand for quiet. Send a delegation. A formal request. Make it clear this is not about readmitting them to the council. This is about survival of all species in the galaxy. If the remnant are not stopped, they will consume everything. The delegation was prepared. Ships were sent. Messages were transmitted to the borders of human space. They contained detailed information about the remnant threat, tactical data from every battle, and a simple request. Help us, or watch the galaxy fall. Days passed with no response. Then weeks. The council delegation ships waited at the border, repeating their messages. Finally, after 3 weeks, a response came. Text only, brief. Your message has been received. We are not interested. Good luck. In the council chambers, the message was received like a physical blow. Some counselors showed anger. Others showed despair. Threxus showed nothing, their form dimming even further. Inside human space, the reality was far different from what the council imagined. Imuna stood on the bridge of her ship, the Starbreaker, and looked at displays that would have seemed like fantasy to council species. Her vessel was powered by energy harvested directly from a star, equipped with weapons that could destroy moons, protected by shields that bent space itself. She was 43 years old, tall and confident with the bearing of someone who had never known defeat. She commanded one ship in a fleet of 600, each one more advanced than anything in council space. Admiral, her tactical officer said, the council delegation is still waiting at the border. They've sent another message. Same response, Una said calmly. We're not interested. But ma'am, the remnant threat is real. Eventually they'll reach our space, Una smiled. Yes, and when they do, we'll deal with them. On our terms. With our technology. Let the council face the consequences of their own decisions. It wasn't cruelty. It was simply logic. The council had exiled humanity when they were needed least. Now they begged for help when they needed it most. But humanity had moved on. Song Junho, director of the Human Renaissance Initiative, reviewed the colonization reports with satisfaction. He was 71 years old, silver-haired and sharp-minded. Under his guidance, humanity had expanded to 200 worlds, not 200 colonies. 200 fully developed worlds, each one terraformed and settled, each one thriving. The technology that the Council had restricted as too dangerous had allowed humanity to reshape entire planets in decades rather than millennia. Population now stands at 40 billion, his assistant reported, across all human territories. Growth remains steady, 40 billion. The Council's current population across 40 species and thousands of worlds was approximately 600 billion. But that number was shrinking as the remnant advanced. Meanwhile, humanity's numbers grew. Junho thought about the mathematics of it. At current rates, in another century or two, humanity might equal the entire Council in population. And they'd do it with technology the Council still didn't possess. In the Council station, Counselor Threxus stood before the empty observation deck. The crystalline being had avoided this place for years, unable to face the reminder of what they'd done. But now, knowing their own end approached, they came back. They thought about Ambassador Park Doyen, the human who had stood at the center podium 50 years ago and warned them. "You are making a mistake," he had said. How right he had been. Threxes had led the vote for humanity's isolation, had convinced other counselors that humanity's rapid advancement was dangerous, had pushed for their exile. And now, as the council faced its greatest threat, humanity sat behind their walls and watched them burn. "I'm sorry," Threxus whispered to the empty room. "I didn't understand what we were giving up." The words vanished into silence, unheard by anyone who mattered. The remnant advance continued. More worlds fell. More species were destroyed. The Council's territory contracted week by week. High Arbiter Velnor called one final session. His body was failing now, his voice barely a whisper through the chamber's speakers. "We have one last option," he said. "We humble ourselves completely. We don't ask for help. We don't request aid, we beg. We admit our mistake 50 years ago. We acknowledge that exiling humanity was wrong. We offer anything they want in exchange for their assistance." "It won't work," Marvek said, but his voice held no anger now, only resignation. "They've moved beyond us." "Why would they help?" "Because despite everything, humans are compassionate," Nari said quietly. "I've studied them for decades. They hold grudges, yes, but they also feel empathy for suffering. If we approach them correctly, if we're truly humble." She trailed off. Even she didn't sound convinced. The message was sent. It was different from all the others. It contained no demands, no formal language, no political maneuvering. It was personal, honest, raw. 50 years ago, we made a terrible mistake. We exiled humanity because we feared their potential. We were wrong. We see that now. The galaxy is dying, and it dies because we removed the one species that looked at old problems with new eyes. We don't ask you to save us. We know we don't deserve that. We simply ask you to remember that billions of beings who had nothing to do with that decision are suffering. If you help, we will be grateful. If you don't, we understand. We're sorry. For everything." It was signed by every remaining counselor, including Threxus. The message was sent to human borders, and once again the council waited. Days passed, then weeks. The waiting was worse this time because they knew it was their last attempt. After this, there was nothing more they could do. Finally, after 23 days, a response came, text only. Longer than usual. When it appeared on the screens in the council chamber, every being present leaned forward to read it. "We have received your message and your apology. We acknowledge the suffering of billions who were not responsible for the decision made 50 years ago. However, we must be clear. We will not rejoin the council. We will not integrate our forces with yours. We will not subordinate ourselves to council authority again. We have built something new, and we intend to preserve it. That said, we are not monsters. We will not watch sentient beings die when we have the capacity to help. We will engage the remnant. We will stop their advance. We will do this not for the council, but for the innocent species they threaten. When this is over, we will return to our territory and the silence will resume. This is not reconciliation. This is humanitarian aid. We hope you understand the difference." Below that, a single additional line. "Admiral Yuna will be in contact regarding military coordination." In the council chamber, silence reigned for a long moment. Then Nari began to laugh. Not from humor, but from sheer relief mixed with irony. They were being saved by the species they'd exiled. Saved by beings who made it absolutely clear they wanted nothing to do with their saviors afterward. It was the most humbling moment in council history. High Arbiter Velnor's voice whispered through the chamber one last time. "Accept their terms, all of them, and be grateful." 3 days later, Admiral Yuna's face appeared on council screens for the first time in 50 years. A human face, confident and strong, looking at them without fear or reverence. "This is how it's going to work," she said simply. "My fleet will engage the remnant. You will stay out of our way.